What made the high school legend become a legend? I was actually part of the legend that still carries to this day. I was one of the editors for our school newspaper, and as a whole, we decided to do an entire issue looking at the drug problem the school had. Our teacher was supportive of it and taught us how to do investigative journalism. After a month or so, we had everything together, and it was really impressive. However, when the administration found out, they put the kibosh on it real quick and refused to release funds to have it published. We were annoyed and decided to raise money to self-publish it. Thankfully, my mom was a prominent business owner in the community and bought an ad for considerably more than we charged typically. She was impressed with our work and thought people deserved to see the paper. With the influx of money, we got it published and distributed it before the administration could step in. We also dropped off copies everywhere we could. Naturally, the community was outraged that kids were shooting up drugs in the parking lot, in between classes, and that there was photographic proof of it too. We made the photo so you couldn't tell who it was. There was so much outrage that parents showed up at the next school board meeting and demanded answers. The head of the school board nearly had to step down and the principal was put through the ringer. After that issue, our funding was completely pulled and the paper was shut down. We continued to have journalism class, but it wasn't the same. We ended up submitting the issue and won all sorts of awards for it too. Now, 16 years later, the school doesn't have a newspaper, and the story as to why is still told. It's one of the few things I did in high school that I'm actually proud of too. Story 2. Year 10, head boy has to be picked, England, and it's picked by vote. It's a year group of about 150 students. So we had the obvious, popular, well-liked by everyone kids. We had the popular lads, the football captain, and the sophisticated, obvious choice. Me and my little posse of in-betweeners, I suggest, F that. We pick one guy from the Forgotten Kids Club. Let's call him Carl. This guy was pretty below average grades, not a lick of athletic ability, and his social abilities, well, he's part of a group of kids that stays behind and spends lunch in the teacher's class because he got bullied so bad on the schoolyard. Carl found himself named head boy to his absolute shock, to the minority being united and the knobheads all split and vying for position. He was a good dude as well, really committed himself to it. His grades improved, he became a better speaker, the lad glowed up considerably, and by the end of year 11 we had a whole army of people carrying him down the street for the final end of exam celebration. We would just sing his praises, despite not knowing him that well, and it just caught on. Jerk move, I know, but we did genuinely like him and thought it would be good for him. I like to take credit for suggesting the whole movement, but really it was just a testament to how one downtrodden dude can rise to the occasion and become the absolute effing ambassador for an entire school. He won over everyone. Dude was impossible to hate. Story 3. This guy didn't become a high school legend until the last 10 minutes of our last day at school. I went to school with this kid for 5 years who, throughout all of high school, was bullied for the way he looked, considered a teacher's pet, generally unpopular with most of the school, etc. No one knew much about him at all, apart from the reasons he was, unfortunately, bullied and ostracized so hard. On the last day of our final year at high school, we had a leaver ceremony, where teachers gave speeches, students were given awards, etc. Typical, painstaking, sit down for 2 hours while you watch all the accomplished sports kids drown in their trophies kind of ceremony. Out of nowhere, the principal introduced a performance from this kid, the notorious, unpopular teacher's pet. We were all so confused. What could he possibly be performing? He got up on our school's theater stage as if he were to do a stand-up special. He then proceeded to perform a 10-minute-long Adult Swim-style sketch in which he did spot-on impressions of not only every single teacher in the school in front of them, but the exam invigilators, the cleaners, and even the effing dinner ladies. This guy had fully produced and scripted an entire one-man sketch where he played all the characters being every member of staff in the school for the very last time we would all be in that hall together. It was truly a then everybody clapped moment in real life, as he got a standing ovation from every teacher in the hall, and all 120 students who relentlessly bullied him all these years prior. It felt like a massive middle finger to everyone who underestimated and ignored him. This mystery kid, who had been bullied and ignored for his entire 5 years at our high school, became a legend within 10 minutes on the very last hour of the very last day of our time in that place. And then I never saw him again. I wonder where he is now. Story 4. We had a teacher who was infamous for not letting you go to the bathroom no matter what. I mean so much so that if you accidentally started your period in class, she'd make you wait. And this happened. So there was a girl who we'll call Katie in class, who tended to be a bit of a troublemaker, Katie hated that teacher because she'd begged to go to the bathroom and got shut down every time. At the end of the year, Katie asked one more time to go to the bathroom. The teacher said no. Katie asked another time 5 minutes later. The teacher said no again. 5 minutes after that, Katie asked again, but said that the teacher was not going to like what happened if the teacher didn't let her go. The teacher hit the roof and said that if she said one more thing, Katie would be sent to the principal. Katie shrugged and said, "This is on you then." And she peed right where she was in her seat. The teacher sent her to the principal, who called her parents, one of which was a urologist. Her father yelled at the principal. The teacher ended up in deep crap. According to other kids, she never denied another kid at the bathroom again. Katie was an effing legend.
Everybody my age pees their pants. Peeing your pants is the coolest.
It wasn't a perfect impression, but hopefully you got that. Story 5. We had a school music festival one year and my band played it. Being a bunch of horny 17 to 18-year-old dudes with raging hormones, of course we had a song about sex. And the chorus was, "'Cause all you wanna do is F." The chorus repeats that line for about 4 to 5 times each round of the chorus, and we play the chorus 3 times. It's our turn to play, and we get about 4 songs into our set before this song comes up. We've got a decent crowd of a couple hundred kids in front of the stage moshing and whatnot. Other kids and administrators are sprinkled across the field watching the show. Now, we can't yell F at a school-sponsored event, so the first run of the chorus, our singer says the line, but holds the mic out to the crowd and gets our friends to yell F. By the end of the first chorus, about 1/3 of the crowd joins in on the call and response, and you can clearly see from the stage that there is a buzz in the crowd about getting to yell F. Next run of the chorus, the whole crowd of kids are yelling it, and it gets picked up by the PA. By the third chorus, it's so loud that it's getting blasted across the football field, and the administrators can't do a thing about it but sit and watch. We heard about that for months after the festival. Some of the teachers gave us props for pulling that one off, simply because it got the admins so upset. Story 6. Got a couple that are somewhat related. 10th grade Spanish. We had this teacher who was a bit strict and didn't have much of a tolerance for nonsense in class. But her punishments didn't have much teeth, so naturally the class would collectively see how much we could get away with. Story 1. I call this potato chips. In Spanish is papas fritas. Someone decided to start saying papas chodes instead. She would say, no, that's not it. But we told her that a substitute teacher we had one time, who was a native Spanish speaker, told us that in some dialects, it's papas chodes. And she bought it, all so we could sneak the word chodes into stuff and write it on the board. It even went so far that unsuspecting students in the class used it on the state test. Pretty sure it continued in subsequent years. Story 2, same class. We had a project where we had to invent a product and film a commercial for it with a Spanish script. There was a partner project, and my partner told me he wanted to make a shampoo bottle that was shaped like a large chicken. We called it El Palo Divertido, the fun stick. We went home and made the thing out of paper mache. He sent me a picture, and I got scared because this thing was not subtle at all. I was so sure we'd get in trouble. We brought it to class the next day. Our teacher looked at it, held it, and I swear to you, practically fondled it. We were nervously holding our breath, and she said, "Great, now work on your script." Somehow we flew under her radar. A class meeting or two later, we all took turns filming our commercials in class. Our routine involved numerous phallic gestures with this miraculous, versatile chicken-shaped shampoo bottle. You can get the shampoo out by stroking the shaft, playing the chicken. You can use it as lip balm. Just rub the tip on your lips and stick your tongue out a little. You can clean your ears with it. Male private part in the ear. We were being so obvious with this thing the class was cracking up the whole time, and somehow we didn't get in trouble. The teacher thought it was all very well prepared. We got a really good grade on the project, and she even showed the video to other class sections and to other classes in subsequent years as a good example of how to do this project. I know I butchered the Spanish. I'm sorry, I tried. It sounds like I'm joking, but I really did try. Story 7. Not my story, but my friend's. My buddy went to a military boarding school for high school. Very strict and regimented, with little to no tolerance for misbehavior. Multiple years of this environment must have pushed someone off the deep end, because during my buddy's second year, someone started crapping in the urinals. Big, sloppy, shameless dookies. At least once a month for these 3 years, these turds would appear. The culprit became known as the Phantom Crapper, and despite the efforts of a task force specifically assembled to put an end to the nefarious poops, The Phantom Crapper was never captured. This person became a legend at this boarding school because of their stealth, conviction, and utter lack of shame. My buddy kept in touch with one of his instructors over the years and found out years later that a copycat pooper had briefly popped up. But he was discovered and expelled after only a couple dookies. He lacked the finesse of the mysterious original. Story 8. One of my friends throughout school was Army Punk Guy. He always wore camo clothing, a jean vest, chains, military boots, and had spiked hair that Wayne Static would approve of. Most people saw my friend as just this weirdo, but knew not to screw with him. He was actually a really cool dude, and he got me hooked on Pink Floyd and Zeppelin early on. One day in high school, the staff arranged a fun fling, or whatever the heck they called it. It was basically a few amusement park attractions like the arcade and skill booths and a rock wall climbing tower. The tower had 3 sides, each with their own tether. Must have been 35 foot tall. Edited, mobile climbing walls max out around this. Most kids couldn't make it halfway up. My friend went over and started climbing before the attendant could get him fitted with a harness. He was about 10 feet up. Staff were yelling at him. He yelled back, "What's that? You want me to try with only using my arms?" Wilford Brimley voice. "And ladies and gentlemen, that is exactly how it happened." He managed to get himself to the friggin' top of the climbing wall only using his arms, no harness, and then proceeded to sit at the top taunting everyone. Before everyone online throws a fit like they always do, yeah, I'm sure he used a foot here or there to stabilize, but he was doing the vast majority of the work with his arms and hands, okay? They called the fire department to come get him down. He got suspended and didn't really care. That was around 20 years ago. Story 9. There were definitely a few of those in my high school. This guy I know through mutual friends walked into the school during summer while it was under construction. I guess one of the guys working left it unlocked. He smoked a blunt all the way up to the principal's office where $27,000 was sitting. Even though they took him to court, he was able to keep the money. Another one was this absolute idiot who walked into school one day with a Louis Vuitton tattoo on his forehead. He genuinely thought people would think it's awesome. He got relentlessly clowned. Found out a year after he graduated that he killed his girlfriend, so he was an idiot and a piece of crap. There was this kid who almost got jumped in the hallway for a reason which would take too long to explain, but he pulled 2 hammers out of his bag and just started swinging. A security guard with Marine training caught his arm mid-swing with the hammer pointed to the sky. The photo of it was going around with people photoshopping lightning and Thor apparel on him before even 10 minutes went by. The 4th one was a genuine legend. This kid was the nicest dude you could ever meet, with no reason to be. His dad was such a piece of crap he went to court and got emancipated. But every day he came to school and would just help everyone, from teachers to students. Just a constant stream of charity came out of him. He was probably the most liked kid in the entire school as well as the most popular. His dream was literally to either become a NASA scientist or a priest in the army, just to show you this kid's mind. Well, one day, since he was in ROTC, he was coming back from dropping his girlfriend off after they went to the military ball. His car malfunctioned on the highway and he crashed into the guardrail, dead on impact. The student body put together memorials and dedications all over town. The kid was actually my best friend in grammar school, but after I moved away for a few years, we kind of fell off. I still have the copy of Super Mario Bros. He gave me so we could play together, because he knew my family didn't have money. Anyway, the kid is what I consider a true, absolute legend. Story 10. There was this one kid in my grade who got expelled for a year. One day in Spanish class, he and his class went down the hall to another room for a quiz. Once they were done, they started to make their way down the hall back to their classroom. This kid and his friends were the last 2 in line. The kid in question gets back to the classroom first while the other lags behind. Now, the movie Waiting just came out and he has seen it. He decides this is the absolute perfect time and place to pull the goat on his buddy, i.e. bending over and tucking your balls behind your legs so your butt and balls are in plain view and tricking your friend into seeing it. He walks faster than his bud to get to the classroom before him, and in front of everybody else who are still getting seated, pulls down his pants and sets himself up for the prank. Unbeknownst to him, his buddy thinks, "Oh crap, I forgot my homework in my locker. I'm already in the hallway, so I might as well U-turn and get it while I'm here." Since the teacher had to stay behind to lock up after the students left the spare room, she was behind his buddy. So here comes this super religious, pleasant woman in her 60s. She takes one step into the room and sees the goods this kid is sporting right in front of the rest of the classroom. He eventually came back after that, so I don't know what kind of arrangement could have possibly been made to make that happen. Story 11. So my school was essentially divided into a middle school and a high school, in different locations but very much one school. When you finished year 9, you started year 10 at the upper high school. So we were in year 9, and this one kid had somehow got into beef with this kid in year 11, so from the upper high school. A year 9 kid is supposed to be, 13, 14? And a year 11 kid is 15 or 16. So there was a sizable age gap between these two guys. I don't actually know how these two managed to get into a beef being at two different locations, but they managed it. And the year 11 kid was like, Friday, after school, I'm gonna come down to your middle school and beat the absolute crap out of you. Year 9 kid was like, no problem, buddy. So the day comes and everyone's getting ready for this fight. It's all anybody talks about all day. School is done and everybody gathers to see what happens. Teachers have caught wind of what's going down and they're posted at the gates holding the year 11 kid back. The year 9 kid finds out that his opponent is being prevented from entering the school grounds. So what does he do? He runs a cool 150 meters towards the gate, knocking people over left and right. There was a huge crowd around both guys trying to defuse the situation before ripping his shirt off like gosh dang Hulk Hogan and beating the ever-loving crap out of the year 11 kid. He ragdolled the dude so gosh dang bad. Nobody effed with him again. People were legit terrified of him. The thing that made it so legendary is that the older kid thought he was hot crap, came down to the school like he was gonna do something, and this kid whips his shirt off like an effing superhero and just wrecks him. What I will add is that the year 9 kid was supernaturally strong. It didn't make any sense. He was strong in a way that seemed odd. We had a weight room at school and he could put up more weight than anyone else. He would player fight with teachers and manhandle them. He had transferred in from a school in Jamaica, so at the time of the fight, nobody knew he was that strong. And also, looking back, there's a good chance he was actually like 17. Edit. The younger dude was not thin. He was kinda chubby, but also quite built, I guess, and average height for his age, but still shorter than the other kid. Reddit really loves a skinny guy shows big muscle-bound dude with real strength is story, and I'm very sorry, but this is definitely not that. Story 12. Being a legitimate psychopath, but also voted the best looking boy in school every year. I think 25% of school had a crush on him, but if you talked to him for more than 15 minutes, you knew that something was legitimately off with the dude. His achievements are: stuck a pencil in the sprinkler in the bathroom and set off the fire alarm. The whole school had to be evacuated, and I'm not sure what happened to him after that. Multiple suspensions for countless fights. One time he got in a fight with another kid from school who hit him in the face with a baseball bat. Had to have facial reconstructive surgery and half of his face was paralyzed. Unscrewed the doorknobs and removed them from multiple classrooms while everyone was at lunch. Constantly a complete a-hole to every teacher in every class, and not like in a funny way, in a creepy, threatening challenge to authority way. He had a personal grievance with my English teacher and effed with him the most. Was probably asked to leave the class and sit outside about 50% of the time. Dated a very popular school 1 year below him for some time. Apparently a very abusive relationship. Her dad tried to run him over with a truck. Apparently he had some gay relations with another guy, but this might have just been a rumor. I believe it though, because I am a dude and he was one of my childhood friends for a while before I learned to avoid him, and he came off really creepy sometimes. One time after I literally had not talked to him in years, he randomly invited me to go see a movie with him, one-on-one, and our parents pressured me to go. It was awkward, and I thought I was going to die. I'm 100% convinced he was a psychopath. He treated his family like crap, and they were all scared of him, and he didn't seem to see anything wrong with it. I also saw him physically abuse his dog at multiple points for almost nothing. At the same time, his personality was very jovial and charming. I don't think he ever ended up going anywhere in life, but if his parents had seen Wall Street Bankers, I could see him being a very successful con artist or serial killer. Story 13. There was a kid in my French class who the teacher was really hard on. He was black, and it was obvious that the teacher was racist and treated him differently, always calling on him and picking on him. So he would purposely cause trouble. He'd interrupt with funny jokes, and we were all entertained by him. He got kicked out of the class a couple of times for interrupting. One French class, we were watching a VHS movie, and the teacher had made a comment about how she wanted a copy before returning the rental, and did anyone know how to do that? She then looked at him, the one black kid in class, and asked him if he could do it. He said, "What, you think I can do it because I'm black?" She tried to backtrack, but he said he could try. So the next French class, she asks him about the video. He pulls an entire VCR out of his backpack with the tape stuck in it and puts it on her desk and says, "Well, I can't get it out, so good luck returning that to Blockbuster. My mom wants you to pay for the VCR, by the way." The Italian class next door was always asking us what was going on in our class because our teacher was always yelling. Story 14. I have an average sense of humor. Go for quantity, one-liners, and almost none stick, but there was this one time. I was 18 years old, moved into a new dorm second semester. It's a floor loaded with stoners, bodybuilders, lacrosse players, women who had their crap together and never a bad hair day, all confident extroverts, and me. If you made a floor from the student who sat at the cool lunch table in high school, this was the floor. There were parties. It was happening. People were nice to me, but I was probably the 45th most popular guy on the floor, being a nerdy electrical engineering major at the time. Less popular than a guy they called Fat Mike, and maybe a bit more popular than Slug, who did nothing but sleep. For some reason, the lounge was packed. Everyone was there. She goes through the familiar stuff and then starts talking extensively about condom failures and how there are certain foods you can't put on condoms because it compromises the latex. Peanut butter was a bad one, jelly was okay, etc. I can't remember the rest, but I'm right near the presenter. Mind you, this crew hasn't heard me say much of anything. I get wide-eyed and say discreetly with a worried look, what about taco sauce? It was one of those times where I wasn't sure how many people would hear it. Well, it carried. The place roared with laughter. Must have been my timing. The presenter stopped in her tracks, then resumed her sentence, then confirmed directly to me that indeed, taco sauce is just fine. More hysterical laughter from all genders. Well, that night I was a legend. I got so many high fives and real name recognitions from just about everyone. The remainder of that semester was a lot of fun. Story 15. This happened back in May, and I was in year 10, about 15 years old. There was this kid called Kyle, who was nice to everyone, but he was bullied quite a lot by this a-hole who was around 6'2". I'll call him Jerkhead. Kyle was around 5'6". He wasn't the only one because he had a bunch of a-hole friends and they would all gang up on him. I wasn't there at the start, but got told this by witnesses. But one day about 4 boys, including Jerkhead, were on Kyle, getting in his face and telling him they were going to beat the crap into him. Kyle, being the nice kid, he kept trying to walk away, but they kept pulling him back. I walk around the corner to see Kyle get pushed into the fence. He was stood up, and at that point, Kyle just snapped. He started viciously attacking all 4 of the boys. First guy got knocked down with 1 punch. The other 3 were all trying to get a hold of him, but Kyle just kept switching targets, sending punch after punch after punch in all their faces. He was able to knock down one of them and started just wailing on the kid's face, causing blood to be everywhere. Jerkhead kicks Kyle off of him, but he got straight back up and punched Jerkhead square in the face, causing him to stagger back into the crowd that formed. The final kid tried to back off, but Kyle got him to the floor and started kneeing him in the ribs and punching him. Eventually, our 6'9" PE teacher was able to grab Kyle and pull him away. From that day on, Kyle was left alone and was considered a legend by all of us. It turned out Kyle's dad was ex-military and found out he was being bullied, so he taught Kyle how to effing beat the crap into people. Story 16. So I found out recently that I had achieved at least pseudo-legend status among the teachers at my high school, but completely by accident. Senior year, I was in yearbook class, and one of my classmates needed to log onto my account to get some pictures I had stored in my files. This was pretty common. We did this pretty often to share pictures we get uploaded. Now, he was the principal's kid, and best I can work out, at some point later in the year, he used his dad's computer to log onto my account in the principal's office and left my account logged in on accident. The next day, I got called in to be questioned on why my account was logged into the principal's private computer in his office. I told the truth at the time that I had no idea. I hadn't done anything. I hadn't pieced together the yearbook thing yet. Nothing really came of it, as nothing was wrong or missing, and I guess they had no evidence to believe otherwise. Fast forward a few years later at a homecoming game. I was catching up with one of my favorite former teachers, and he asked if the rumor was true that I broke into the principal's office and used his computer to change my grades at the end of my senior year. I laughed and said, "No, of course not. I don't even know what you're talking about." I really didn't. This was the first I was hearing of this. He nodded knowingly and smiled. "Of course you didn't. Of course." Story 17. I guess not really the type of legend you want to be known as, but legendary nonetheless. When I was a freshman in high school, we had a lockdown on campus for an active shooter threat. Turns out that some kid had heard another diabetic kid through the stall wall of the bathroom changing his insulin cartridge to inject himself and thought that the sound of the cartridge being changed and the empty one hitting the floor was a gun being loaded. But for the time being, we're sitting windows drawn, door barricaded in 6th period algebra under the assumption that there was an active shooter in the building. A rather portly ginger kid, whom we'll call Steve, informs our teacher that he desperately needs to use the bathroom or he's, in his words, gonna blow. Our teacher responds he will have to use a water bottle in the corner of the classroom, where Steve explains that gonna blow was not in reference to having to urinate, rather that his number 2 lunch special from Avatar's Punjabi burrito was ready to complete its journey, if you know what I mean. Long story short, this kid straight up craps in a thank you to go bag behind the teacher's desk, squatting down. Then he wipes his dusty, crusty butt with Kleenex while everybody in the room tried to simultaneously stifle their laughter and disgusted reactions for fear of the shooter hearing us and bursting in. Steve was sort of a class clown type, so he took the torment pretty well and even cracked a couple jokes, but you could still tell that he was mortified. The next week, admin installed Home Depot buckets with toilet seat covers on them in every classroom on campus, which have remained to this day. Story 18. This dude was a legend to me. A kid was accused of bullying a girl to the point of tears. She said this kid picked on her in the hallways and called me names I don't even want to repeat. The kid told everyone he has no idea where she's getting that from and why she's making that up. What really happened was he walked in a classroom and says she was being yelled at for cheating on a test. He asked her if she was okay after the teacher was done and she lost it on him. Anyways, the boyfriend of the girl who cried bully brought a weapon to school. He got 4 guys to go with him to beat the crap out of the kid. They cornered the kid, who was in tears, saying, "I'm sorry, I'll apologize to her. I don't even know what I did, please." When one member of the 5 guys who were there to kick his butt pushes aside his friends and turns around, "Your girlfriend is a freaking liar and you know it. She got embarrassed and yelled at a kid. Now she's stuck in a lie and she doesn't know how to get out of it. If you want to hurt the kid, you'll have to go through me." The 3 remaining non-boyfriends all backed down, saying stuff like, "Come on, man, just make him say sorry, that's all." When the boyfriend finally speaks, "Kid has to apologize to my girlfriend. F you." And from that I could tell they were all friends after that. Nothing ever happened to Kid. Eventually the girl who cried bully and her boyfriend broke up, and that was that. I was reminded of Harry Potter, where Neville Longbottom was rewarded for standing up to his friends. Shout out to that dude. He's a legend. Story 19. There was one teacher that was crazy hated because she refused to let anybody have fun. So one day the kid sitting next to me, we'll call him Dave, is on his phone. And the teacher, Gorilla, says, "Get off your phone, it's distracting you from your education." Keep in mind this is a smart kid, and he is done with his work for the day, as this was our last period. Dave looks up at her, smirks, and goes back to playing Plants vs. Zombies Heroes. Not a joke. Gorilla becomes upset and completely embarrasses him in front of the whole class. "This is why you have 2 missing assignments and we needed an intervention with your parents. Judging by the fact that I could hear them scream at you as soon as you left the building, I'm guessing they weren't happy. Get off your phone, it's making you lose educational time." He responds by aggressively digging through his bag. "What are you doing?" Gorilla asks. "I'm just trying to look for who the F cares." Dead silence for about 7 seconds, before all the guys in the room burst out laughing hysterically, and the teacher just looks flabbergasted. She sent him to the office, and when he returned to get his stuff, he gave her a death stare and a smug look. Best thing ever. Story 20. We had a kid who I'll call James at our very large public school who was a bit of a burnout, but genuinely a nice guy, and was sort of universally liked by everyone who knew him. He was a very skinny, lanky kid, couldn't have been more than 5'8" at the time of the story. James was good friends with a girl I'll call Stephanie. Stephanie was a freshman in a relationship with a senior who was very clearly abusing her. She'd come to school with bruises, making excuses about what had happened. I and others reported it to the guidance counselors, but they couldn't do anything about it. Since 1, she would deny that anything was wrong whenever someone in authority asked her what was going on. And 2, it all happened outside of school grounds. James and Stephanie get together one day outside of school, where apparently she told him the entire story. Everything her boyfriend was doing to her, she just broke down. The very next day, James comes to school, finds the boyfriend, who is much bigger than him, across the street, and absolutely beats the crap out of him. Best part is, James rips both of the gauges out of this guy's ear with his bare hands. James got kicked out of school for starting that fight. The boyfriend stayed, and Stephanie and him eventually broke up. I don't really know what James is doing now. Last I heard he was a volunteer firefighter somewhere. But I think about him all the time, standing up for this girl when every other system failed her. Absolute legend. Story 21. In my junior year, the school had over 3,000 kids in it already, and that year they implemented one-way staircases. We all hated them and fought back and would keep using them both ways until detentions and suspensions were given out. Well, one kid said F all to that and started crapping in a brown paper bag and leaving it in the landings of random one-way staircases. The crap would get trampled on by hundreds of kids within minutes, and it got smeared all over the halls. It went on randomly almost every other day for about 3 months to have it randomly stop right before winter break. Well, break came and went, and we started noticing this kid Charlie was no longer around. Turns out, he was caught dropping off his last bag before break and was expelled for the remainder of the year. When he came back the next fall, he was a legend. And as soon as a copycat popped up the next year, he was pulled in only to have credible alibis as his teachers watched him like a hawk. Story 22. Early 1990s. A kid known as a class clown type joined the football team. He was athletic and played soccer, so it wasn't totally out of the norm. Suffers through double sessions in August, in the northeast of the US. August is awful for the area. Wins a starting job as a DB and kicker, and all is set for the first game, which is at our school. For some reason, the kickers were in charge of the bag of footballs. I have no idea why, and back then the home team provides the footballs for the game. So he's standing with the bag of balls as the coordinators meet with their teams to talk through the plans for the first quarter. Our team wins the toss and elects to kick off. The kickoff team heads onto the field and begins to line up. In a flash, this kid, the kicker, grabs the bag of balls, runs out to midfield and grabs the ball on the tee, wearing all his equipment, and sprints into the parking lot, which was like 50 yards away. The kid was fast. His car was already running. We found out later one other kid was in on it and turned it on him for about 10 minutes before kickoff. All the players began cheering because, who wouldn't? Security is chasing him, but they have no shot. He's in his car and peels out before anyone can really understand what just happened. The driveway for the school loops around the field, so everyone could see him doing about 60 miles per hour out of the driveway, the security van tailing him and all. He turns out onto the main road, and he's gone. Everyone was in shock. The coaches met at midfield. Someone went into the gym and found some bullcrap old footballs that were not regulation size, and after about a 30-minute delay, they played the game with Pop Warner-sized balls. And we lost. The kid got suspended, but it elevated him to legendary status, and was one of the greatest long game pranks I've ever seen. Story 23. I'm late to the party for this, but I'll share my story because it's just too good. Beginning of 9th grade, this troublemaker kid, we'll call him Derek, has already made a reputation for being a little crap. And not just any little crap, this guy is creative and has no compunctions about getting suspended. So one day the Cancer Awareness Club is hosting a bake sale. They sold these beautiful cupcakes with pink ribbons on them, at least 50 or so, selling for $2 each. Derek strolls up and pulls out a $100 bill, buys every single cupcake. For some reason, no one thinks this is strange behavior. Derek takes the cupcakes and leaves school property. Everyone is like, what? Where's the dude going? Our high school was super close to the freeway, like a 2-minute walk. Apparently, Derek goes to the effing freeway with all 50 cupcakes and just starts throwing them at cars. By himself, he's not filming or anything, he's just throwing the effing cupcakes. It nearly caused a couple accidents. He gets found out, obviously gets suspended for a couple days. A week or so later, Cancer Awareness is having another bake sale. Derek strolls up to the table and does the whole thing again. Drops another $100 on crappy cupcakes and takes them out to the freeway again, throws them again. Might have actually caused an accident this time, but the teachers just let him do it. They saw this guy buy 50 cupcakes and thought, nah, it's gonna be okay this time, right? Despite him doing the exact same thing last week, and he didn't get expelled surprisingly. But yeah, for the rest of high school, he was known as the Cupcake Kid. Story 24. We had optional float trips planned the month before school started again while it was still hot out. They didn't cost anything other than stuff you had to bring. If you didn't have a tent, they would buddy you up with someone that did. So the attendance rate was high because it was actually pretty fun. It was a way for new students to form a bond with the returning ones. There were about 120 people in our high school at the time, as we were part of a small private school, so it wasn't too unmanageable. There was a kid who, as a running gag, would wear the same tiny leopard print Speedo every single year, and it would get a ton of laughs. On the trip going into his senior year, the chaperones half-jokingly announced that Speedos were not a permissible form of swimwear on this year's trip. Though it was hilarious and well-received by all, they showed a little too much cheek. He showed up in breakaway pants that year and tore them off to reveal the now famous tiny leopard print Speedo one final time, and everyone went effing nuts. They shrugged and basically gave him the green light, as it was the last time in 4 years of attendance that the famed exotic Speedo would ever get the laughs. Story 25. Too many stories to tell. For context, I went to an all-boys high school. We had like 1,200 boys in the school, like 300 a grade. These stories were legendary in and of themselves and not necessarily made individual legends. 1. There was this burly man who was a history teacher. He was massive and had a beard to his belly button. He claimed he was pure Viking. He drove a really beat-up van that had rust holes everywhere. It was a mess. So there was a tradition in the school that every year at the end of the year, a group of the final year students would carry this guy's car to the top floor corridor of the stairs, the 3rd floor. Every year I can remember that man screaming anger at seeing his rust bucket on the 3rd floor. 2. Guy slept with a hot teacher on our lower campus in her class, which had class windows facing one of our fields. It's safe to say there was a crowd of spectators of over 100 guys. 3. There was once a fight between the whole of 2 grades. It lasted for over 30 minutes and included teachers. There was 12 broken noses, a dislocated shoulder, broken ribs, and sprains and scratches after it finally stopped. 4. Once a fight broke out between a group of boys and the visiting team's fathers. A lot of injuries there. 5. A fight broke out between 2 guys which ended when the other guy DDT'd the other guy twice on an outdoor concreted surface. In this process, the guy lost his grill. In this madness, the weird first year ran and picked up the grill. The fight happened on Friday. He proceeded to rock up on Monday with a new grill that his father had bought him over the weekend. It looked suspiciously like the grill that he took. 6. Head boy in my first year threw someone through the cafeteria glass window when he was in his first year. He also was the guinea pig for the new zip line the school fitted between our lower campus and upper campus. The company had just fitted it and the whole school came to watch the unveiling. He picked up so much speed and went flying into the pole at the bottom, shattering his leg and losing his scholarship. 7. Guy tried to jump the fence to play hooky with his school bag on his back. He cleared the barbed wire, but it kinda caught his bag. He was stuck on the fence while the headmaster walked slow mode to inform him he was suspended and he can go home. The headmaster then proceeded to turn around and walk away without helping him at all. We had to prod him with a stick since we didn't have a ladder to get him down. 8. Guy came to class and calmly asked the teacher for someone, stating that another teacher was calling them and wanted to speak to them urgently. The teacher accepted. It was all a ploy, because as soon as the kid got outside, he got the crap beaten out of him by this same kind Samaritan. He came back with a broken nose. 9. In the middle of an assembly, while the principal was in the middle of a very serious speech, which he was giving with great conviction, you heard out of somewhere in the hall from multiple directions the sound of a balloon getting blown, but you couldn't see anything. Suddenly, all at once, about 5 blown-up condoms were hit into the air. It became a collective game of don't let the condom hit the floor, with everyone hitting them back up as it came near. There's so many more that come to mind, but I feel like I've typed too many already. One of my all-time favorite stories and the hardest I laughed while at school, the school had a strict no phone policy. You had to lock it in your locker as soon as you entered school. A lot of guys would hide it and keep it on them. I remember we were in English class and my friend was sitting next to me. The teacher had given us an exercise and so the whole class was dead quiet working through the work. In the midst of all this, I hear my friend's phone start ringing. He knew if the teacher heard it, he would get confiscated for a week and his parents would kick his butt. His genius idea was to start screaming at the top of his lungs a bunch of random noises while he dived for his phone to switch it off. The teacher obviously jumped up and didn't know how to react. When he was interrogated by the teacher as to what happened, he said he couldn't remember, he just blacked out. They brought a professional in and everything. They ended up putting it down as a mental break and promised to make the environment a better, safer, less stressful space for everyone. I have laughed for years at that story, hands down one of the funniest things I've ever witnessed. Story 26. The overwhelming absent-mindedness of my school's robotics team, that I was a part of and quickly became head of programming in to go on to captain of the team in my senior year. There are 3 events, 2 of which happened before I came to the school. One of the leading figures of the team and a genius gets a threesome at super regional FTC competition. He does this on his hotel roommate's bed, is caught red-handed by said roommate and had to switch the sheets and live in shame forever. Surprisingly, nothing else as far as I know, but I saw a video of him in a leotard dancing to something on a pole in the entranceway to a house once. Very interesting guy. 2. The last day they had before I came in the following year, someone left the sink on in the robotics room, former home ec room before home ec was killed off. The room flooded over the summer and had to be fixed a bit before I entered. 3. This happened my freshman year, and the second to last year the robotics club was in the former home ec room. We were borrowing a robot done by a local STEM robotics research company in the countryside with like 3 STEM companies total, so big deal for us. This robot was made with the intention of helping autistic children learn easier, and they lent it to us to let us play around with its code and see if we can make it do something interesting. Some dumb effer leaves the robot boxed on the gas stove. Some even dumber effer apparently turned on the gas stove, and nobody noticed until the next day when it was already too late. We turned the box upside down, and there were the rings of the metal on the stove, burned half a foot into the box. Through the robot, suffice to say, we had to give up $12,000 of our fundraiser money, which consisted of most of it, almost all of which was from when some rich dude regularly donated to our team a year before. Little bonus, the alarm getting set up and alerting the whole school of an intrusion after and during school due to forgetting to disarm it on entrance was at least once or twice a week. Story 27. Several years out of high school, I randomly meet up with an underclassman. We were talking about high school and she told me a story she heard about one of my best friends. Apparently, my friend became a mythical figure in our high school because of a rumor that he bought drugs in New York off a drug dealer, then smoked it with one of our teachers. I also heard the same story from someone later that would have been in early middle school at that time. So this story had legs, and was a story repeated in the halls of my old school. What really happened was the summer of our junior year going into our senior year. We had a class trip to New York City. My friend had a summer birthday and turned 18 in the middle of the trip. Of course he wants to celebrate, so he, another one of our friends, and I go to a cigar shop on 5th Avenue, where he buys us some nice cigars. Later that day, we wind up with all the parents and the teachers, and my friend jokingly makes a big deal about being 18 and lights up his cigar. One of the parents plays along and asks for a hit off the cigar. And that was it. We didn't even smoke anything until college. Story 28. My school was a relatively large school for the area, but teeny tiny compared to most other high schools in larger cities. It looks way different now, and they're adding a bunch more to it. But back in the 70s, the school sat kinda on the opposite side of a road splitting developed land and basically farmland and fields, so it had its share of city kids and farm kids. We had all the standard funny high school senior pranks, walking the cow up the stairs, labeling 3 piglets, 1, 2, and 4, setting them off in the school, stealing the local big boy's statue, and placing it on the roof, that kind of thing. But one that's still discussed at length is a group of 4 kids, all seniors, and they're protesting their last day of school. You see, my school had multiple snow days every year, which would push back the last day of school. But graduation was typically set on a specific date, so reservations could be made at the venue and everything. The school itself was too small to host their own, so it rented out a much bigger venue for a couple hours. Occasionally, graduation was set a couple of days before the last day of school due to snow days, and the school would withhold diplomas to ensure you'd come to school the last few days. These guys were upset. As teenagers won't do it, they hatch a plan. It must have taken them months of planning. Nobody knows how they got access to the school. Legend has it, a disgruntled janitor conveniently forgot his set of keys in a nearby and mysteriously unlocked shed. But around midnight on Monday, after graduation, these kids completely take apart the principal's, or superintendent's, I'm not sure which, 1970 sedan and completely reassemble it in front of the administrative offices inside the school. Another one that happened my sophomore year, a junior and senior started an actual food fight. I wasn't there, but I did see videos from kids who managed to sneak it in their camera phones and record it. They cleaned it up pretty fast and had set up fences and things to the cafeteria so kids couldn't get in. but it was bad enough that the junior got expelled and the senior suspended for the rest of the school year. I had to finish high school and summer school that year. Story 29. There was this one kid at another school who became so notorious that it seems everyone in the area had heard at least a few tales of his antics. When I finally met him in person, I found out that what was told was less crazy than reality. The big one involved lighting his school on fire. He was putting together set pieces with the drama club, and they had gotten to fooling around, as you do. He had a lighter, because reasons, and they were improvising flamethrowers with the cans of spray paint. Again, normal. Then they got to thinking how it would look on a wall. Things get carried away and he ends up lighting a panel that was still coated in fresh paint, and it starts to spread. And he got that all too familiar feeling when a harmless bit of fun goes wildly out of control. The fire spread so high that it was now licking the curtains. The handheld fire extinguisher does almost nothing to slow the spread. At this point, one of the drama students runs to pull the alarm and everyone evacuates. The fire department, fortunately just a block away, comes and secures the stage. Luckily, the fire hadn't spread into the rafters and he has saved the fate of burning down the whole school. The craziest part, though, came when he was to be disciplined. Usually, these kinds of things end with expulsion, but the whole staff of the school liked this kid so much that they all fought for him, and he only ended up with a brief suspension. I think like a few days or a week. Effing unbelievable, because the word of mouth said he was expelled or transferred to juvenile delinquent school or that he had to move. Story 30. He effed the band teacher and she went to prison. He was friends with a lot of my friends, so I ended up getting to know him pretty well. Really cool dude. He was smart, witty, friendly, and everything inside matched his appearance too. I remember hearing that some kid in our grade effed the band teacher. It must have been effing rough hearing everybody talk about his dirty little secret right to his face. He knew if this gossip continued, the truth would eventually come out, and it did. The teacher was arrested, and a few weeks later, I guess one of his friends got careless and let it slip. He took it really well from what I could see. He was still the same funny, confident kid he always was. None of us ever talked about it afterwards because it would have just been effed up to ask him about it. He never wanted this teacher to go to jail. They must have weighed heavily on him in private. But at the end of the day, she was a predator, and he was taken advantage of. Simple as that. Story 31. My freshman year, or maybe even before I went to high school, there was a student who was self-massaging it in chemistry class and got kicked out. The chemistry teacher was considered the best-looking teacher at the school by far. I wouldn't be surprised if it's still mentioned in the school. A kid in my class also made a bomb threat freshman or sophomore year and was kicked out after we were let outside the school when bomb squad investigated. The biggest thing was after I left a year or so later, one of the teachers was caught banging a student, not the chemistry teacher. So here's that story. The teacher joined when I was just a junior. Senior year, she married another teacher. 2 years after graduation, she was caught by the librarian hooking up with another student, and the student was a freshman. The librarian did nothing about it for months until it all came out. Teacher arrested and fired because, ew, gross. Librarian was at least fired because she didn't say anything right away. And it sucks to be the husband. Not sure what happened after that, but I'm assuming she went to prison and he probably divorced her. Story 32. Went to a posh school. The upper class bullies put this kid in the massive plastic waste bin head first. He was a weird kid, an anarchist who loved computing. He genuinely hacked into my computer and installed loads of viruses, and I had to kick his butt the next day in school and get him around to remove it. But I respected the crazy effer and asked him if he could teach me some of his crap. He did. He taught me about IP flooding and some other script kitty crap. We even hung out outside school 2 or 3 times. I lost my effing mind when they binned him and took them on in a fight. I managed to bust the big bully, Chris, his nose, and I put him out of the fight while the other 2 held my arms. I broke free and gave them a crap kicking too. It was pure fury, like crying with anger until the teacher came in and asked what was the commotion. After that, the bullying went away, for the most part, for our 6th year, and we all became a lot closer. I had 3 other fights after that defending people who were getting a lot of crap. I saw an old classmate on a train, and he told me that I was the coolest guy in school because of it, and reminded me of the time I cut him free of the duct tape which held him to the goalposts. I work today as a door supervisor, a security guard. Story 33. In my school, we had a guy who jumped off the 2nd floor window. No, it wasn't a self-unaliving attempt. Someday they put a net above the football field on our high school, in between the first and second floors. It was very clearly to avoid the ball coming through the windows, but this one guy, this absolute legend called Raphael, thought that net was there to avoid people falling to their deaths. One day he and his friend had a heated debate about the purpose of the net, and he kept insisting it could bear my weight. When everybody had already moved on from debating it, Raphael decided to jump on the net to prove his point. Everybody ran to the window and watched horrified as he was caught by the net, bouncing off it a little bit triumphantly, and then the net ripped and he fell. Raphael broke his arm and clavicle pretty bad, a lot of metal pins where it needed to be fixed, and he was forever known as the guy who jumped off the roof. A lot of people never knew his name, but everyone knew he was a legend. The funny thing is that he was really smart and went on to be accepted in the top university of our city, one of the best ones in the country actually, with one of the highest grades in admissions exam, and he got 60 out of 66 questions correctly. Story 34. Girl in my graduating class, let's call her Kate, because that was her name, had a brother just starting freshman year. One of the a-hole football jocks who we'll call Jackweed, that wasn't his name, but it was giving him a bunch of heck, and Kate got between them. She's maybe 5 foot nothing, though kinda on the athletic side, an avid swimmer and soccer player, and Jockweed is maybe 6'3" or so and right on the line between burly and chunky, so he's just kinda looming over her. Kate tells Jockweed to shut up and leave her brother alone, and he, the smart idiot that he is, retorts, "What did you just say to me, ho?" Kate repeated herself. Jockweed hauled off and slugged her in the jaw. Kate just kinda shook her head and said, "Oh, you'll have to do a lot better than that," and stepped around Jockweed and kicked out his knee from behind. Suffice it to say, he ended up looking really stupid in front of a bunch of his friends. I mean, first off, picking on some rando freshman isn't exactly "I'm the man" kind of move, but then getting your butt kicked by a girl 15 inches shorter after she just completely no-selled your best punch? Yeah, that's a legend. Story 35. I was the high school legend. I punched the most obnoxious piece of crap nuisance in the entire school. He gave teachers crap. He gave me crap. I was amazed he had friends at all. I think he just had friends that liked his house or something. Big, fat, preppy a-hole he was, but he was probably the most hated student there. How do I know? My day came. I was late for class and I was squatting down at my locker getting my books. I feel something hit my hip. I look down and it's a freaking bologna sandwich with nothing else on, potato bread wrapped in aluminum foil. I wasn't going to take this disrespect. I knew people were afraid of me already because I was that weird goth female dog. I stood up, chains on my trip pants jingling and all, and I pointed to the small group of young men walking the hallways and demanded, "Who did it?" All of his friends pointed right to him. This kid had bullied me before. His favorite thing to do was call me that goth psycho female dog. But his friends knew I wasn't effing around that time. So they outed his butt and I nodded and went to class. My mind filled with questions and puzzlement. I wanted to get back at him. I wanted to get back at everyone who ever effed with me. So I thought long and deep and I knew I'm gonna punch that effing kid right in his big gummed small teeth mouth. I knew the consequences, and I was a good girl. I always stayed out of trouble, but not this time, no more. So it was last period when I came up with this plan. The bell rings. Showtime. I asked someone nearby if they knew where the fatty was. That's not his name, this is just what I'm going to call him. They told me he had gym last period and he'd be coming out of so-and-so hallway. Perfect. Same hallway as my locker where he threw the sandwich. I wait, and I wait, and I wait, and there he is. I say to my locker mate, "Hey, locker mate, watch this." I shut my locker. The butterflies in my stomach, my knocking knees, dang them all. I strut up to this idiot, and right before he can open his ugly, stupid face to taunt me once more, wham! I aimed for his nose, but I missed. I got him right between the frickin' eyes, though. His head jerked back and chaos erupted. My name was being shouted and cheered. People were laughing. A lot of "what the heck" were coming from all who saw it. I punched him hard, and I punched him good. I went back to my locker, got my stuff, but was quickly pulled inside the Spanish classroom. The teacher tried to ask me what had happened because, of course, Fatty went and cried to her. He was almost in tears, screaming in my face, "You think you're cool? You think you're cool because you punched me? I don't care." And I'd had it. I screamed back, "Of course you don't care. You don't care about anyone but yourself, and you're a pest in this school." The teacher sent me away and kept him. People were coming up not even 5 minutes later asking me things like, "Did you really punch Fatty? Oh my gosh!" High fives galore. Yeah, the mass text got around pretty fast. I can imagine what they said. Even the effing vice principal could just barely stifle his laughter and smile as I smugly rested my boots on his desk. I mean it when I say literally everyone hated him. You can't make this crap up. I was assigned 3 days in school suspension, and Fatty got 3 days out of school suspension for harassment. During my stay in the classroom where ISS took place, teachers occasionally would come in to quietly congratulate me or leave a piece of candy on my desk. One teacher even hugged me. From that day on, when Fatty got out of line, people would threaten him with my name. I was honked at in the street and my name was shouted out the windows. I was forever known as the Fatty Slayer, and I'll never let go of that glory. Story 36. These stories cannot compete with the most legendary senior prank ever pulled off at my small public high school. It was a masterwork. Hilarious yet cruel, it led to the legend himself losing an Ivy League scholarship and the principal using the graduation ceremony to compare said acts to literally the Holocaust. 1. 12 seniors arrived in the wee hours of the morning and using ladders climbed into the courtyard where the door was unlocked, allowing access. 2. The ringleader came with 1,000 plus crickets and 50 mice he was able to procure from pet stores and labs, and he released them into the halls. 3. The ringleader bought bottles of spray paint, super glue, battery-powered clocks, extra durable locks, all on his father's credit card, of course. His father happened to be the Board of Education. 4. What ensued was utter chaos. Uncounted lockers and doors, super glued shut, notoriously easy to crack lockers were installed with alarm clocks to go off at random, and those lockers were secured by heavy-duty exterior locks. 5. The following morning, school was closed for 2 days. Entire classrooms were coated in spray paint. Teachers were sobbing, seeing their workspaces essentially destroyed. That's the cruel part. Crickets still heard 10 plus years later. It was actually pretty awful in retrospect. So much property was ruined. My mom was actually teaching at the school at the time, and thankfully her room was spared, but likely because one of my brothers was in on it, and also my mom was regarded as an easy A teacher if you didn't make her life hard. Regardless, the prank led a giant renovation of the entire high school, an overhaul in security, and Mr. Legend lost his full scholarship when it was all quickly traced to his dad's money. This happened in Connecticut, by the way, so everyone was white. Nobody arrested. And Legend went to the same Ivy, just without the free ride. Ah, Connecticut, the peak of white privilege. Story 37. Not sure if this constitutes as legend, but here it goes. I took AP Bio one year and was struggling, as I was more of a history literature guy than a science guy. One day I ran into a fellow classmate. I'll call him Harry, during a US history class and asked if he could help me out with some AP Bio homework. Rather than tutor me, Harry agreed that he can help me by giving me his homework in exchange I lend him my history homework. He had this code of honor that I agreed to. 1. Never copy word for word. 2. Always do your homework. 3. Delete the evidence as soon as you are done. I went on for about a month before one day I felt particularly lazy and told him I wouldn't be able to send the history homework for one day, but at least I felt comfortable taking the AP Bio homework myself for once. Harry had me meet with him right away, where he explained that if I didn't do my history homework, not only him, but also a fair number of other AP students wouldn't be able to turn in their US history homework. I put 2 and 2 together and realized that the AP students were developing this secret web of homework trading. For every class, there was at least one student who would share their homework, to which was exchanged for homework from other classes, and so on and so forth. Every class was covered, and as long as every student did their homework, everyone was accommodated. Some days I didn't even have to do my homework, as my contributions were reliable and consistent. I even met more AP students running the web who were able to get me homework for any class I needed. That was when I met Joseph. Joseph was an AP student rising through the ranks of popularity and began partying with all the athletes and cool kids. He also became notorious for a reputation of being the guy to talk to if you needed some last-minute homework or help for an oncoming test. Somehow, he figured out how to get tests, even the ones the teacher would personally make days before the test day, onto PDF files, and he would share those among anyone who simply asked. Meanwhile, I formed a club that got declined by one of the top members of the student council. I'll call him Nick. Nick was one of the highest overachievers in the school. Teachers loved him, and he had his own unique Hermione-like schedule. since he took classes at both our school and a local college. He got to take tests earlier than any other student and was rumored to have been accepted by several Ivy Leagues. I think he ended up going to Yale or Harvard. He was super into tech and data analysis. He didn't like my club though. I also met another AP student whom I shall call Michael, who gained a reputation for being a guy who hacked into a teacher's computer to change his grades. He was an eccentric guy who kept to himself, but for some reason the AP students always avoided him, spreading rumors that he was bound to get caught for one thing or another. One day I decided I was done with the web. Joseph insisted I should send my homework anyway, especially with my knowledge of the web, but I told him I wanted out altogether. He offered me a PDF of a big, upcoming final exam for AP Bio, but I insisted I no longer needed the help. He gave up, and I began taking school more seriously and doing homework myself for all my classes. The following week, a huge scandal erupts among the AP students. A teacher caught wind of the PDF, sent in a group chat. After supposedly one of the cool kids got caught and at least 15 AP students were dropped from the course, some suspended, and some rumored expulsions. Teachers made us turn in our phones and backpacks and empty our pockets before every exam for every class. The web all fell apart. I no longer got any texts asking for history homework. Joseph was no longer the guy and had to suffer some academic consequences. And Michael was rumored to have been suspect number one for the teachers. I ran into Harry one day, and I asked about the whole scandal and if Michael really was the mastermind behind it all. Harry laughed and explained that Michael was not smart enough to pull off such a scheme, and in fact, had nothing to do with the web at all. Michael never asked, nor received, any help from the web, and was rather pinned as a useful scapegoat the AP students could point all the incriminating evidence towards. Harry even went as far as to say that the web would have never been compromised if Joseph wasn't so into being the guy among the athletes and cool kids. Though, Harry did wonder how Joseph was able to get those PDFs. At a house party, I got drunk with Joseph, and we started laughing about the web and how it all went down. I begged him for how he was able to get the PDFs, and eventually, with enough Hennessy, he spilled the beans. Turns out, Nick had a special watch that he wore whenever he took his tests days or weeks ahead of everyone else that could record pics and videos and upload them as PDFs. Joseph then offered to let me back in the web, which Nick and him wanted to scheme back into life, but on a much smaller scale. No more dealing with homework, just the PDFs now. But I refused, and that was the last I heard of the web. Sorry for the long essay, kinda got lost while writing this all out and reminiscing in my old devious ways. Thanks for reading though. Maybe this is going over my head. Is this a movie plot? That sounds too dope not to be a movie plot, okay? If it's not, somebody get on that. Put your casting recommendations down below. Story 38. There was a weird kid that transferred to our school. Super dorky in every which way imaginable, but he also played football and was really big and buff. I befriended him because he was in my weightlifting class. Apparently he got that big by doing push-ups while watching anime. One day at lunch I ended up getting in a fight with someone and that person came back with a friend to try and jump me. I noped out of the situation. I ended up getting a suspension once the word got around what had happened. When I returned after my suspension, my weird friend randomly said to me, "Hold my backpack, I'm gonna go fight those guys." He went on to go provoke the guy that tried jumping me. The guy was with 3 other people and one of them got in his face and started shoving him around. He clocked the guy good and makes him back off. When another one of the guys from the group comes up and starts swinging, he dodges all 3 of the punches and then countered with a punch that made the guy go down. As he's going down, the guy tried grabbing his legs to tackle him. My friend grabs the guy around the waist and throws him backwards over the top of him. As my friend is scrambling to get back to his feet, a 3rd guy comes rushing in. My friend runs a few steps up a wall and jump kicks the guy in the chest. It was almost like an Anthony Pettis Showtime kick. All 3 guys that stepped up to fight him backed off. My friend is still standing in the middle of the crowd, beckoning them on like a "bring it on" sort of motion. Nobody obliges. The guy he initially went over to fight ducked out as soon as things started going down and left his 3 friends behind. My friend was forever remembered as that one guy who ran up the wall and kicked somebody. Story 39. I don't know if he was a legend or had people terrified of him. A mate of mine is a really nice guy, but grew up in a rough area and knew how to handle himself. At a new school in a well-off area, my friend was known for being really quiet and a bit of an outsider. So of course the rich popular kids picked on him. The thing was, it was no big deal to my friend who, as I said, had previously gone to a really rough school. The ringleader of the gang of popular kids did boxing and thought he was a tough guy, which led him to make a big mistake. He figured the lack of reaction from my friend was due to fear. not indifference. So he escalated. One day, he and his gang waylaid my friend, and the ringleader punched him in the face, knocking him down. This wasn't my friend's first rodeo, however. He once told me his experience of fights back at his old school, which he expected to come out with broken bones, and he was resigned to it, so it didn't faze him. So he got right back up and he laid into the ringleader. A boxer might be technically proficient, but if he's trying to avoid getting hurt, he's going to lose to a less proficient fighter who doesn't care about injury. And so it shall be. When the other guys in the gang pulled my mate off the ringleader, my mate was sitting astride him on the ground, smashing his head repeatedly into the concrete. Word went around what had happened. While other kids may have cheered the ringleader getting his comeuppance, they also now considered my mate to be a psycho killer. So now the bullies avoided my mate, but so did a lot of other kids. Story 40. There was this one kid in East Knox, in Ohio, known as Juice. He got the name for standing under a hallway heater with a juice box every day and was constantly late for class because of it. Well, he had no filter, and he said exactly what he thought, which got him in trouble a lot. And really all the kid did was be himself. He was weird, but he didn't give a dang what anyone said or thought. And there's just tons of stories about him, mostly fake because the crap got out of hand, but I do know a few of them to be true. I mean, one time the kid was late for gym class and had no time to change. The dude ran down the hall changing into his gym clothes, never got in trouble because he didn't show any nudity. The kid called one of his morbidly obese teachers fat in front of the class, got suspended for it. He wasn't even trying to be mean to her, the dude just had no filter on his words. The kid asked the disciplinarian, Mr. White, who was strict as F, and got fired from the previous school he worked at for being too harsh, for condoms so he could prove a point. Dude did a belly flop on concrete just to show off to this girl. He never tried to show off to a girl again after that. The dude was really a high effing jumper. He befriended all the older kids, climbed the side of the school, do a hit of a jewel through the window for one of his friends. He stuck up for himself as well, and one time got upset at some bully showing off and being a butt during dodgeball, so the whole time the kid stayed to the very front of the line and effing danced. The guy almost never got hit and showed the bully that he wasn't crap. The kid did a ton of other things. He only went to that school for his 7th grade before he left, and I know that the kid had a lot of effed up things going on at home. I just hope that the dude is doing all right. And Juice, if you're reading this, yes, you're an effing legend in my book. And how are you doing? Please DM me. Story 41. My school was brand new the year I was a freshman, so we all were the legends, though freshman year was a dang crap show. 1. A teacher let a kid borrow her car to pick up McDonald's. To no one's surprise, he crashed it. He was fine though, but she was fired. 2. Start of freshman year, teacher introduces herself to the class and then asks if the kids have any questions. My friend Matt nonchalantly asks if she's a lesbian. 3. 2 students were like Romeo and Juliet, and their parents refused to let them see each other, so they pulled the fire alarm every day and made out. 4. Girl left a marquee screensaver which threatened a Columbine situation. Barely anyone goes to the school that day. That girl goes to school and is high AF. I think they suspended her for a few days, but they didn't know she was the one who left the screensaver. She did it to get out of a test. I found out who the person was years later. 5. Personal favorite, Jen and Mike are dating. There's a house party somewhere and Mike can't go. Jen goes and apparently hooks up with half the guys there and was naked in the shower. Ended up banging this kid Brian, who unfortunately gave us the details in trig class. Well, Mike's friends who witnessed all this obviously tell Mike is obviously hurt and mad. The next day in school, Jen has a meltdown and is blaming the alcohol. Mike isn't hearing it. As she dramatically stomps away upset in the cafeteria, Mike turns around and hits her with a brownie in the back of the head. 6. Girl who had turned 18 went on Jerry Springer. It aired the day of senior prom, and we watched it in class. FYI, it is all fake. She met the person she was to fight there. The story was made up there that she was a babysitter having an affair with the husband. The fighting was real though. I remember seeing her come to school the weekend after with a black eye and a lot of bruises. And because most schools have this legend, there was a dude who crapped all over a random bathroom like every week. He was caught in the last week of school and they refused to let him walk with anyone in graduation. Also, one dude told everyone to boo him when they called his name. We don't know why he told everyone this because we all planned on booing him anyway. Story 42. The repeat a few grades school bully while serving in detention. asked to use the bathroom, and when denied, proceeded to stand and urinate in the corner. He had the good grace to see himself down the principal's office without being asked. I always wondered how that went. The culturally liberated but heterosexual male, Brazilian exchange student, whilst walking across the podium to receive his diploma, kissed the old man principal and also older man marshal full on the lips. The female cheerleader participated in sexual congress with a sufficient number of male athletes, such that it became common school bus parlance for the said athletes to say, "Man, this sweat-soaked catcher's mitt smells like M." The deviant South Asian intellectual unscrewed all the school's phone handsets, removed the bottom speaker mic unit from each one, then taped them underneath graduation chairs so that his classmates could hand them back to faculty during their diploma podium handshakes. The other, repeat a few grades school bully, who found himself up on the second or third floor when a fire alarm sounded, jumped from the window onto the roof of a parked car, spraining, but not breaking, his ankle. And when questioned about his thought process, he said without blinking, "Nah, I knew I'd be okay. I was wearing my steel-toe boots." The proto-hipster smart guy sat through our stricter than strict English teacher's screed on how every day should be a lesson. I don't ever want to hear anyone say that they didn't learn anything today. And when asked to read the definition out of the dictionary, faithfully recited, "Lesson, verb, to make or become less, to diminish." Upon which the teacher broke a yardstick on his head. Double oops for the teacher. The talented young musician had a trumpet mouthpiece on his desk, and when asked by the aforementioned English teacher about its purpose and function, replied, "It's an implement of sexual torture." To which said teacher returned to his desk, resumed daily administrivia, then asked the student to demonstrate said implement in front of the class. Musician stood up, buzzed the Star-Spangled Banner, then saluted the flag. Not really a good year for that teacher. It was all very existential and rebellious. Super 1986 John Hughesy. Story 43. On my last day of senior year, there was a rumor that the biggest crab you've ever seen was in a boys' bathroom stall on the north side of the 4th floor. My high school was fairly large and had 6 floors. Each floor sorta kinda had its own culture and or grade, so you would usually stick to just 1 or 2 areas of the school in a given year. What this meant is that as the rumor spread, kids were taking true pilgrimages across the school to see the supposed crap. This is right before the smart camera phones were common, so you could hear about it through text, but you had to see it with your own eyes. With senioritis at its peak, lots of us were trekking over to see this thing. The bathroom was filled with tons of my classmates when I finally got there. Gendered bathroom be danged. This crap remains the largest human poop I have ever seen to this day, and I cleaned bathrooms for a few years after college. It was shaped and sized like a gosh dang regulation football. I have no idea how a person could have possibly made this thing, or how they could have possibly pushed it out of their butt as such, or if they're living. I have no idea how it could have been flushed away. I have no idea how the situation could be resolved without breaking that crap into dozens of pieces with a plunger. I will never forget it as long as I live, and will always share a horrific respect with many classmates for whoever dropped that deuce on that fateful day. Story 44. I'm actually curious if it's still talked about 20 years later. Last I heard of people talking about the airport Royal Rumble was about 10 years ago, and I no longer have any ties to people that would be able to find out. I graduated from Triton Regional High School in Runnemede, New Jersey in 2003. Senior trip was the traditional Disney World trip. We found out when we got to the Philadelphia airport that our trip's itinerary was parallel start to finish with another South Jersey high school, Rancocas Valley. They weren't like rivals or anything. The schools were about 35 minutes apart and didn't really associate with one another outside of sports. But 18-year-olds, right? The flight there was fine. The stay at the hotel was fine. The day trips to the parks and aquariums, all fine. The flight back was not good. If you remember, 2003, we were still on disposable cameras. Well, we had a red eye back at 2 a.m. 300 18-year-olds exhausted. One of my classmates, who later became a cop, started effing with people, hitting the flash while people were trying to snooze. So someone got in his face, and they came really close to fighting on the airplane, but chaperones broke it up in time. Don't worry though, plenty of travel still left. There was tension the whole rest of the flight. getting off the plane, and even at the baggage claim. I kind of saw it all start to unfold as my school, Triton, stood across one side of the baggage claim island, Rancocas Valley on the other, death stares going every which way, then people started chirping at each other. Somebody from Triton said something to somebody from RVHS that set them off, and he charged at them. Now, during this trip, my one classmate had to bring his mother as a chaperone by law or stipulated by insurance or something. He had a heart condition that required a family member or caretaker to be present for the trip. She was about 5'4", 110 pounds soaking wet, and this kid, built like Saquon Barkley, en route to a different classmate, ran right through my classmate's mom. She had a hairline fracture in one of the vertebrae around her neck and broke her ankle, and to say that triggered a brawl would be an understatement. This crap was a royal rumble. I'm talking 150 seniors all out for blood. There were even some kids literally jumping off the baggage claim and drop kicking kids. Total effing mayhem. Multiple police units, an ambulance, a fire unit, and I could have sworn I saw 6 ABC pull up, but I guess not, because I've searched hard for any news on the web and came up completely empty-handed. So if anybody is out there who's aware of this story and you come across this, stop and reminisce. I don't want to end on a bad note, so 2 things to add. The bad note, I was in municipal court about 7 years later, and the classmate's mom was there, still had the neck brace on and walked with it. That was 10 years ago, and I have no idea how she is and may never know, but I want to say I hope she's okay. Finally, the next Monday we had school, and during homeroom, our VP gets on the intercom, overriding the period bell, so it felt even more ominous. She says, "I'm sure by now you've all heard about the situation when we landed back home in Philadelphia." Pauses. "Everyone go to class. Not you, seniors." And literally snickered in the most dastardly way. And with this, "I got your butts," playful tone, she says, "all of you can come straight to the auditorium. We're going to have a little chat." She was quiet for about 5 minutes, just looking at us, expressionless. The coldest 5-minute stare I've ever seen or felt. Then she just explodes. "I can't believe all of you. What the heck is wrong with you kids? You can't fight in an airport representing our school. You're all a bunch of dang animals." But crap, I'm so gosh dang proud of all of you for sticking up for Joey's mom. And if you had to do it again, I'd cheer you guys on all the same. Like quiet at first, and by the end of the sentence, she's 11 out of 10 fired the F up. Pretty awesome sight from a 60-something-year-old 6'1" vice principal we called Skeletor. Story 45. Kid A was quiet and was not really known too well by anyone in school. I knew him better than anyone else at school as he was my neighbor. He was bullied a lot, but was still friendly to everyone. He was kind of lanky and not very much muscle on him. There was another kid, B, who was kind of weird that got bullied a ton. One day, the school bully, who was big and scary, was picking on Kid B. He was physically beating him up in the hallway. Kid A just showed up and beat the living daylights out of the bully. Bully kept trying to fight back but was doomed. After he was done, Kid A just casually got up, pulled out his phone that nobody knew he had, and called an ambulance. There was a ton of people in the hallway watching when it happened. It was silent, and nobody really moved. Kid A walked himself right down to the office and told the principal what happened, as he ended up leaving in handcuffs. The bully ended up having 2 broken fingers, broken leg, and a concussion as well as a lot of bruising. Might even had some more stuff, but I don't remember. Anyways, there was plenty of witnesses who wanted the kid to be free and felt like the bully deserved it. Much to everyone's surprise, Kid A showed back up to school a couple days later and started a fundraiser to help the bully. Ended up raising well over the amount in medical bills, and the bully ended up with a few grand in his pocket. Everyone had respect for that kid from then on out. He had always treated everyone nice, but that bully had pushed him too far. He wasn't even friends with Kid B either. The bully had changed completely when he came back to school, by the way. He was way friendlier for the rest of high school. Story 44. In grades 9 and 10, lots of the popular kids used to get drunk at one of 3 different parks kind of near the school. Sometimes it would be like 10 kids from a handful of the various schools in the area, or sometimes 100. These weren't big parks either. Inevitably, the cops would show up after a while and confiscate the booze and search everyone, then send us home. Anyway, some of the delinquents there were also petty criminals with a grudge against police. They would always give the cops attitude and usually get handcuffed until the cops called their parents. One night, a couple of cop cars rolled through one of the parks, sirens and lights off until they were nice and close. As soon as somebody spotted them, lights and sirens came on and everyone started running. A couple of cops jumped out and gave chase on foot. This is Australia, mind you, so cops aren't as loose with the rules as other countries. One of the boys from my school was sprinting and getting chased by a cop who was yelling abuse at him. My mates and I were hiding in a bush when we saw this. One kid get tackled into the concrete, his backpack went flying and cans of beer flew onto the pavement. As this cop is struggling to handcuff him, another delinquent comes running up behind him and, like a Victorian-era pickpocket, unclips the handgun from this guy's belt and takes it off, cackling as he goes. Everyone regrouped at a different park, but he went home, I think. Anyway, in typical Aussie teenage nomenclature, he became that right idiot that stole the cop's gun. At school the following week, the entire school had to sit in front of a couple of detectives and a cop sent to give a presentation, aiming to retrieve the firearm and warn us of the danger of the whole situation. They did the same with about 5 other schools in the area. He had about a year or so of infamy amongst a handful of schools. He would show up to these park parties and everyone would know who he was, and people's older brothers and cousins tried to buy it off him, but he rarely spoke about it. He got arrested the following year for robbing a corner store with another guy from our school. I don't think he was armed though. Floated around for a while doing spray painting jobs, then moved to Alice Springs, the deep south of Australia in terms of culture, but actually located in the middle, to be a bartender. Story 45. Not my story, but my dad's. Not so much a legend per se, but it seems to fit the theme of the post. My dad was born in 1959, and his brother was 10 or 12 or so years older than him. I don't know his exact age, I'm sorry. They never really got along, and it tore my dad up over the years, as he didn't really know why. Always thought Mike had beef with him. Dad would invite him to family functions every time, and every year. I had seen my uncle maybe 6 times in my life, and Mike died last year. My dad came home from the hospital and cried, told me he was sitting by his bedside at the hospital, and they made up too late, neither one knowing what the beef was about in the first place. My old man started telling stories of my Uncle Mike. Mike was 7 foot something, and by all accounts of everyone who knew him, he was fast. And I'm not just talking the fastest kid on the block, but the fastest there ever was. But Mike liked to smoke, and he hated authority. One day right after track, Mike smoked some cigarettes, and the track coach caught him. Coach said that Mike needed to quit or he'd be off the team, even if he was faster than the wind itself. But Mike was full of himself, took a long draw and blew the smoke back in the coach's face. Coach kicked Mike off the team just like that. This upset my grandmother, as my father came from a very poor Midwestern, half-Polish family. Track could have seen Mike out of that life, at least for a while. Things were rough for a bit. A year passes and my dad is at the school with his mom looking for Mike. Dad comes to the track and spots Mike by the fence, smoking with his friends. As my old man approached Mike, the team's new fast guy walks by Mike and some words are exchanged. My dad tells me the new track star said something, but seeing as the rest of the story, Mike hasn't learned anything. Maybe it was Mike who said something? The star tells Mike he is better, he's faster. Mike pulls another draw on the cigarette. Deep. He laughs and challenges the track star to a race. Mike says he will beat him, barefooted. The old man may have been young, but when sitting at the hospital bed next to Mike and told this story, Mike's face lit up and he cried, asking how my dad could remember that story from so long ago. As a boy, my dad watched Mike catch the sails of the wind, leaving the track star in the dust by a large margin. Apparently, the track star went on to win state and nationals in the USA and made it onto the Olympic team. My dad kept crying as he told that story. Everyone that knew Mike all knew no one could beat him in a race. It was one of the things that everyone said at his funeral. I guess the story fits with Mike's life. Maybe a legend at his school, but certainly a legend to my father and the people that knew him. Story 46. There was a year-long senior project at my high school. You got to choose your subject, and one of the girls decided to do a project related to sex education in schools. As part of her project, she gave a talk to other seniors, showing them how to put a condom on a banana. And I think she also demonstrated why you shouldn't use oil-based lubricants with condoms. There were condoms left over after this, and one of my teachers said that legally she couldn't give them to us, but she was going to leave them on her desk and she wouldn't notice if they just happened to go missing. One girl comes up, looks at the condoms, and scoffs that there was no way her boyfriend's chicken would fit in one of those condoms because he needed extra large. My teacher got upset at this and she ripped open one of the wrappers and blew up one of them like a balloon. She then asked if his chicken was bigger than the balloon. The student get a chance to answer because the classroom door opened Now my teacher's desk was right next to the door, so when she turned around to see who it was, she ended up hitting our principal in the face with an inflated condom balloon. The entire class burst out laughing. Story 47. I have a few. One time, everyone had to choose a movie to study in English, and we collectively decided on Shrek. One guy managed to trick the teacher into playing Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life instead of the actual movie. The second is that one guy managed to single-handedly turn a 2-hour-long history class into a conversation about Shrek and Ronnie Pickering. The third is that some guys in my grade pooped in the history block sinks and painted with the crap on the doors and mirrors. Those toilets have been converted into a classroom because of them suckers. My friend did two legendary things. Snuck down to the computer in an assembly and managed to play the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song over the speakers. And the second, there was some new open-ended bathroom. Boys one side, girls the other. Boys could see the girls' side, girls could see the other. Sinks in the middle. I don't know the proper name for those types of bathrooms. I was having a pee in the girls' end. I'm female-bodied, but I'm non-binary. And I heard banging and moaning. Came out to see that there was some intimacy going on and my bandmates watched and filmed. In my ukulele club, a friend told me and the teacher in the story of the two 8th graders who were caught effing in the instrument cupboard. I was lucky enough that I have my own ukulele, and I didn't need to go in there. But ever since that day, I never went in, afraid of finding old male fluid or more intimate shenanigans. Also, my 7th grade computer science teacher is now in jail for being a predator and committing bestiality and sending the images to a member of the Welsh government. I remember him looking like he was constantly taking pictures and touching people. People from his old school are saying he was fired for being a predator before being hired at my school. Story 48. This was me. Here's the story. The first fight I got into in high school was 2 weeks into my freshman year. I had lived in the area for barely 3 months. I knew almost nobody. Turned out I shattered the wrist of the first-string JV quarterback, who was an absolute a-hole. It gave me a bit of a reputation. So from freshman to junior year of high school, people came to me whenever they were being bullied. I taught some people how to fight or pointed them where they could get training that would suit them. Then senior year happened. This kid came in, freshman, an absolute piece of crap and picked fights with anybody and everybody. Someone came to me about it. I talked to the kid and he tried to hit me. I beat him until he was apologizing through his weeping. Now for an important tangent. There was a school tradition that every senior class does some sort of fundraising to do something to add to the school. For context, the class before mine replaced the office secretary's desk. We all knew it was a way for the school to get out of spending money by getting the students or their parents to pay for crap. Most years it was relatively minor stuff though. For my class, we got together enough money to have an ornate outdoor fountain added on. It was installed in the same place where I made that kid cry, and it has since been called the Fountain of Tears. Whenever someone asks why, they get the story of me whooping up on a wannabe bully. Extra note, my younger brother went to the same high school as I did. When he graduated, he campaigned to have a plaque added to the fountain, giving it the official name of the Fountain of Tears. It didn't go through, but dang did he try. Story 49. A friend of mine was kind of a legend back when I went to school with him, for multiple things. The most often occurring thing was when he'd get people alcohol. He was pretty developed for his age, big, strong guy at 14, full of body hair, and could all around pass for 18 plus at the time. Drinking age where I live, so even higher year students would ask him to get them alcohol. What made him stand out as an absolute legend, though, was when he went to camp with all of the third-year students. We visited a beach on the last day, and on the way to the beach I sat next to him, and everyone turned to me and said he had a surprise for everyone once we got to the beach. I was intrigued, but he wouldn't tell me what he had planned, so I just waited. By the time we got to the beach, most of the boys had caught wind of him having something planned, and so we were all just waiting in anticipation until we got there. We finally arrived and he walks along with the other boys, but where we stopped to put our towels down, he keeps walking. He walks up to a group of girls and starts unpacking there. Since we were teenagers and insecurities and awkwardness were overwhelming, we were already taken aback, but he just casually puts his towel down and takes his shoes off while the girls look at him. As he gets to his shirt and pants though, he suddenly pulls off his shirt and rips off one of those Velcro rip-off pants he'd apparently been wearing for the entire bus ride to reveal one of those green Borat man thongs that go over the shoulders and show everything. He casually winks to the girls and says, ladies, and proceeds to run into the water all Baywatch-like, as the teachers are conflicted about whether to scold him or laugh their butts off. It is, to this day, the most hilariously surprising thing I've ever witnessed, and everyone who was there remembers him as an absolute legend. Story 40. Too long didn't read. I became an overnight sensation because I humiliated my teacher at a school assembly by calling him out on his BS statement in the best way possible. I think I've posted this story somewhere else, so I'll try to keep it brief. But basically, I had gotten to school Monday, and everyone in the high school grades had seen a video of one of the gym teachers bust out his rapping skills at a bar the previous night, except for me. We had a pointless assembly that morning, and afterward, the teacher was asked by the high school student body to address the video. So he gets up. "You guys saw the video then, before it was taken down?" Screaming and cheers, he was then asked to bust out his skills. He's suburban minivan white. No way he was anything better than fairly good. Anyways, he hesitates. Says he would, but he needs a beat, clearly trying to get out of it. He then calls out this super shy freshman from the basketball team to beatbox for him. This led to a cheering for the crowd. The kid, of course, shrunk into his chair. Teacher thinks he's off the hook. At that moment, I'm in my seat, remembering my childhood listening to my dad's a cappella vocal band rehearse and perform the way the vocal percussionist moved his lips to make a beat. How hard could it be? So I quietly tried in my seat. I'm confident enough. I'm known as the weird kid, so if I fail, it will just become another weird thing I tried to do. I immediately stand up. I say I'll give him his beat. Golf clapped as I make my way down the aisle. Weird stares. I actually hear one of my friends go, "What did he just say? Can he even do that?" Visibly nervous. "So you're going to back me up then?" "Yes, unless you're chicken." Let's go. A minute passes. "What's going on, teacher?" "Give me a minute. I'm thinking." When he finally says he's ready, I was handed a mic. I busted out a beat, not daring to look at the student body, instead looking at the now sweating gym teacher. He sucked. It was maybe a 25-second freestyle about the value of friendship, which had been the point of the assembly. Does that sound childish? We thought so too. But he finishes. The crowd goes crazy. He starts to thank the crowd, but to both our surprise, they aren't cheering for him. They are now chanting my name. I felt amazing. On top of the world. I was now the school legend. Story 51. This happened in 7th year during an exam. A kid who we are going to call Albertito was biting a pen. Suddenly that pen broke and he got stained on his teeth by ink. It looked like he ate the ink and asked the teacher who was watching the class if he can go to the bathroom to clean his mouth. But he said, "No, nobody can go to the bathroom during an exam." Albertito asked 2 more times the teacher, and like the 3rd time he asked, the teacher said, "If you ask me again, I am going to remove your exam." After this, the teacher turned his sight to the other side, and when this happened, Albertito got out of his chair and escaped running from the class. The teacher realized his escape and left the classroom to chase him. While they got another teacher to watch the students, everybody copied the exam and passed the assignment. Despite Albertito was a fat dwarf kid, it took 15 minutes and the school needed like 3 teachers just to catch him. Nobody will ever forget you, Albertito. Story 52. Mine's more like school legend. It was sometime between our elementary and high school days when rumors started that the daughter of our principal got pregnant. This was a private Catholic school and we're talking about, so you can already imagine how conservative things were during our time. No dating, no holding hands, definitely no kissing, nothing physical at all. So for the principal's daughter to be rumored to have gotten pregnant was quite a big shock. We didn't see the daughter for quite a while. Some said the daughter went on vacation in another country. The rumors eventually died down and we just didn't talk about it. Life went on as usual until that one strange day. It was after our PE class that my friends and I decided to go to the science lab to look for our science teacher, to ask him about a project we were supposed to be working on. We went in and on a shelf we found something that we've never seen before. It was a bottle containing a fetus submerged in formaldehyde. Since we were kids, we didn't really know what it was. At first glance, it kind of looked like an overgrown bald rat or a hamster, but upon closer inspection, it definitely was a fetus of the human kind. Anyway, we asked our science teacher about the fetus, and according to him, it was already there when he got in the lab. So he said it's probably someone above him who put it there. A few weeks later, we finally saw the principal's daughter again. She never talked about what happened to her. Students just quietly assumed that the fetus in the science lab was her aborted baby. Story 53. We had a school tradition at the first boys' home basketball game of the year of TPing the court after our team scored their first basket, and some folks in that year's senior class would always be the ones to arrange the supply of toilet paper and get out the push brooms afterwards for a quick return to the game. It was a pretty well-established tradition at that point, and the teachers and vice principal all knew that plans were in the works to make it happen again. Anyway, in the days leading up to the game, the teachers and VP repeatedly urged the students not to go through with it, saying we should know it's a big mess and that it draws a technical foul that could cost us the game. It culminated in the VP saying, "Look, if I see anybody throw toilet paper on that court at that game, they're getting suspended." Of course, this wasn't really going to dissuade anybody from a little fun. The TP was smuggled all the same to the home side bleachers that evening, and the gym was packed. The VP is there at the game, down in the front, keeping an eye on the students. The game starts. The tip-off goes to our team. They run down the court, and the VP turns her back to the home crowd as our guy scores, and hundreds of rolls of toilet paper fly gracefully through the air across the court. The students always gave her a hard time about being a total hard butt, but she sure as heck wasn't heartless. Story 54. I was pretty renowned at our school because I used to make counterfeit disco tickets and flood the market. They were pretty easy to replicate. You just had to get the right kind of card to print onto, which I got from the art department. Then each ticket was hand numbered with a ballpoint pen, which was also easy enough. I printed so many on the first run that I couldn't even give them all away. Hardly anyone actually bought tickets, and as such the actual event was carnage because they didn't expect that many kids to turn up. I entered the disco with a real ticket and took all the extras I had with me. At the end of the night, I threw hundreds of fake tickets all over the dance floor for them to find. They canceled school discos after that until they could figure out a better system, but they definitely lost a lot of money that time around. By the time the next disco came around, I had already been kicked out of school. But I only lived down the road from a quite large school, and we would all hang out in the school field at the weekends, climbing the roofs and generally causing mischief. One day we realized we could unscrew the skylights and actually get into the school. It didn't take long for me to find a set of keys to the school, and that helped me get the supplies for my second run of counterfeits, which I sold at the bus stop outside the school, of course, and got into all sorts of crap all over again. Needless to say, it wasn't too long after this that they installed a CCTV everywhere, so that swiftly put a stop to all my production and the fun we used to have. CCTV really ruined a lot for our generations, man. Story 55. At lunchtimes, we'd played Ultimate Tournament on a school LAN. Each of us had the game on a memory stick. Games were not allowed on the school computers, by the way. One lunchtime, during a loud and competitive game, the school's IT technician remotely logged onto my friend's computer. Someone must have complained, and closed down the game, deleted it from the memory stick, and opens a Word document saying, "No games allowed on school computers." No biggie. My friend went into the trash on the computer, reinstalled the game, and fired it back up. A few minutes later, the IT guy resumes remote control of the computer, deletes the game again and all the other games in the folder, then deletes them from the trash folder as well. Proper job. Then the IT guy started snooping around some of the other folders on the memory stick. A folder called Do Not Open was opened. Within that folder, a folder called Games and Nothing Else. Opened games to find a whole load of more games and folders. Deleted those games. Another folder, marked Inappropriate, was in the folder. Opening that showed a file called Do Not Delete. Now, I'm not a techie person, but I was later told that the Do Not Delete file was some kind of instruction to shut down the computer. You delete the file, your computer shuts down. When it was deleted by the IT tech guy from the central computer linked to all the computers in the school, it shut down his computer and every computer in the school at the same time. For the whole afternoon, nothing was usable throughout the school. It was a few minutes until our head of year burst into the IT suite and pulled my friend aside with the memory stick and dragged him off to the head teacher. He got suspended for a few weeks, but he got legend status for much longer. Story 56. 1999 lip sync contest. 5 guys put on an incredibly homoerotic dance routine to Salt and Peppa's Push It. 3 guys in spandex unitards doing the basic skit and dance routine. 2 guys posing on either side of the stage in their briefs, peeling bananas held at crotch level and then eating them, then throwing the peel onto the stage, upon which one of the main dancers slipped, fell on his back, which opened the opportunity for more homoerotic moves like full-length leg rubbing. Immature, for sure, but the administration let the entire thing proceed. And I have never laughed so hard in my life. I knew one of the participants, and there was trouble to pay. When his parents were hauled into the principal's office sometime after the fact for the big meeting, one of his parents asked why they didn't stop it. The response was, "We were worried there would be a riot." To this day, rumors persist that someone somewhere has a VHS copy of the performance, but nobody I know has ever seen it. Even teachers admitted in private that it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen, and that the Mastermind would go on to do great things, maybe even SNL. I'm sure the description doesn't convey how funny it was, but hopefully it gives a portrait of Canadian high school life. Story 57. At my school, we have two buildings that sit on opposite sides of the quad and that both overlook it. The buildings are somewhat connected by a roofed path that circled the quad. So one day I was walking up on a building for a Spanish class. It was lunch, but I wanted to beat the rush of students. As I turned away from the quad, I hear a roar of them. I immediately turn back and see a dude in a cheap Halloween Spider-Man costume on the roofed path. He then does various Spider-Man poses. The classic crouch and run earns a cheer from everyone. He continues to do this and then jumps down from the roof, running away from the security guards. To my knowledge, he was never caught and his identity remains a secret. Skip to my senior year and it's lunch again. I failed to mention that the buildings allow access to the roofed path, but in order to do that, you must go over to the railing and jump down on the roof. So I'm eating lunch in the cafeteria and I hear cheering from the quad. I think it might be some senior event for prom, so I think nothing of it, until the students get up from their tables and run out towards the quad. I get curious and follow them. Lo and behold, I see a senior sitting on the roof path with a karaoke mic and speaker. I forgot what he talked about, but I remember him saying that he doesn't care about the punishment. He then gets up and walks up and down the roof. At this point, everyone in school knows and we all follow him. The teachers and security guards come to see what's happening. They attempt to talk to him, but he ignores them. The bell rings, but none of us listen. We stay in the quad and watch what is happening. The teachers then take away my and the other student's phone for recording the whole thing. The teachers then tell us to go to class, but we just walk away and watch from a distance. A security guard then brings a ladder and sets it down on the roofed path. I then hear from the word of mouth that one of the teachers called his mom and had her come to the school to get him down. A little later in the week, there was an assembly about the whole thing, but we didn't care. Later in the year, I think during spring break, the entrance to the roof path gets fenced off. But you can still get around it, but with a bit more difficulty. I'm not sure what the punishment he was given, but I think they took away his grad night. Absolute legend, though. I congratulated him at our choir class. Story 58. I was in a public speaking class my senior year, and our final project speech had a very elusive theme of just being like a major announcement. Something in that vein. My buddy decided he would announce that he had invented a cloning machine. In order to do this, he brought a big cardboard box, wrote "cloning machine" on it, and planned to have one of our friends, who was not in this class, pop out of it during the speech. But he wanted it to be a genuine surprise for the class. So he planned to have our friend sneak out of his class to come to ours, climb in the box somewhere else, then carry the box into our class without them knowing someone was actually inside it. There are several small details that add up to achieve this story's perfect ending. One, as this was meant to be a big deal end of semester speech, it didn't happen in our normal classroom. Instead, we gave them at the top of our school's huge entryway staircase. Two, the landing on which we were set up was the same landing you'd use to get to the principal's office. Three, at the bottom of the staircase was the entrance to the school. So the security guard station was there. And four, as part of their clone costume, both of my friends were wearing identical hats, which you were not allowed to wear in school. So my one friend gets out of this class, climbs in the box, and my other friend starts carrying it into class. He gets to the bottom of the staircase and the security sees him and tells him to take off the hat. As you can imagine, the box was quite heavy, required 2 hands to wear. He can't take off the hat. He tries to explain to the security guard that the box is heavy, he can't put it down, and he can't take off the hat, but the security guard doesn't listen. Eventually, he tries to balance the box with one hand on his leg while he takes off the hat, but it's a normal cardboard box and can't hold a normal person. So the friend inside falls through the bottom. The security guard very understandably tells them both to go to the principal's office, which is how our whole class, without any context whatsoever, suddenly saw our classmate dressed exactly like another student carrying a box called cloning machine, being taken to the principal's office together. And when our teacher asked what was going on, the security simply responded, "This knucklehead almost cracked this knucklehead's head on the stairs." Story 59. My high school didn't have any real legends, but my middle school sure did. It was a rural school and didn't exactly have a lot of funding. One time my whole class had to get on bus and drive to the ER because many of the kids were having bad allergic reactions to something we were making paper mache with. Several kids were on oxygen as this ancient bus rattled and banged 20 minutes to the hospital. I don't know what specifically caused all this because just like in every other class I went in for 12 years, I wasn't doing the dang work. I think it was bleach, but I don't know. Why would we have been using that? Then again, it was a poor school. Another time our custodian had to tackle an emu that had escaped a nearby ranch and wandered onto campus. Seems a tad extreme, but could you imagine if an emu punted a first grader? Kid would be pink mist. One time my buddy and I were wandering around the school field and nearby areas after school hours, shooting at wild turkeys with pellet guns. The kind of pellet guns that look exactly like real rifles unless you look at them real close. This was less than a year after the Columbine shooting, and we were not smart to do that. Nothing came of it, but people were really confused why someone would leave a dead turkey on home plate. Story 60. I want me to be considered a legend, but I don't necessarily think this makes the cut. Probably my favorite memory from high school, though. I was very straight edge all through school, always very polite, made good grades, and never got into any trouble. In my second semester of senior year, it occurred to me that I had never done anything outside the lines, and that sort of bummed me out. So my friend, a sophomore, and I bought 30 packs of stink bombs on eBay. They were the little glass vials with that sulfury liquid in them. This seemed like the most harmless yet substantial prank we could pull. Being the student I was, though, I still didn't want glass on the floor, so I would wrap a vial in paper towels and walk through a crowded hallway near the stairwell. I'd just drop it out of my pocket onto the ground, and my friend would follow me from about 5 steps behind to make sure it gets stepped on. We would both walk into a nearby bathroom for a minute or so, and when we came out, the hallway would be completely cleared. It was kind of crazy because that hallway was always shoulder to shoulder until right before the class bell rang. We used this method over the course of Thursday to Tuesday, breaking 12 stink bombs in total, including when we broke in a crowded auditorium. The plan was just to go on this way indefinitely. We weren't telling anybody it was us. I was content to go to my grave with nobody knowing it was me. At some point, someone suspected and accused my friend. I don't think he quite knew how to deny it casually enough. He texted me that he was in the principal's office about to take the fall for the whole thing. And I felt horrible since the whole thing was my idea. So I turned myself in, trying to redirect some of the blame off of him. In the end, we each only got 3 days of ISS. I had a really good relationship with my principal. He told me he could have given us up to 10 days of OSS. Not sure if that was true or not. After returning to classes, I remember walking into my Spanish class and making a comment about la juela and people laughing about it. And my English teacher, who was one of the 2 leaders of Stucco, pulled me aside and said, "I'm really supposed to kick you out of a student council for this, but the semester is almost over, and I'm just not gonna worry about it." Overall, 10 out of 10 experience. Story 61. So Bubba was a big truck-driving, America-loving Southern boy who was actually the son of Lebanese immigrants and raised in New England. This persona that he adopted sophomore year, out of nowhere, was legendary in and of itself. One week, Bubba started selling Mountain Dews out of his backpack during school for $1. Being the businessman he was, he recognized the thirst for dew and quenched it. During classes, there was an honor system of leave $1 at my bag and take a dew. It was a great system, until one day, the code of dew, the code of honor, it was broken. 1 room temperature Mountain Dew was stolen, a wrong that had to be righted. One of Bubba's friends saw the thief, and instead of confronting him and asking for $1, he came up with a better idea. He had gone fishing a few days earlier and left the fish in the back of his truck for several days, in case he needed it, I guess. The following day was the Friday before a long weekend, and they had the last period of the day together. So Bubba not only snuck a dead, rotting fish into the school, he managed to sneak it in the thief's backpack without anyone noticing. The kid never realized he had been fished until he went to his backpack the following Monday night. Bubba never got in trouble, even though they knew it was him. Story 62. This one's a doozy. I only got to know what happened because one of the guys involved told us when he graduated. This is also pretty old, so I'm sure account security has come a long way since then. There were a crap ton of computers all over our high school, in the comp lab, in the library, and study areas. The problem was that in order to install anything, you needed admin rights. And you couldn't copy or run applications off a USB without admin rights either. And there was this group of guys who really, and I mean really, wanted to play Minecraft at school. So step 1 of their plan was to bring a bootable USB they could plug and play with. Great idea, because like a lot of school acts with security back in the day, they didn't lock the BIOS. so it was pretty simple. Unfortunately, it had several drawbacks. You had to fix the boot priority on every computer you wanted to play on, and bootable USB 2.0s weren't exactly known for their speed. Step 2 was a bit more complicated. Since the BIOS was unlocked anyway, they created a bootable USB with the Windows password reset tool, and were able to, not clear on this part, create a new admin account or change the password of the default admin account. Then they simply signed into that account and installed Minecraft. However, this had the same issue as the last method, that you had to do it for every computer. Step 3 was the legendary part. They noticed a teacher frequented a particular computer in the library often, probably because it was in a quiet corner. So they did the Windows password reset thing, and instead of Minecraft, installed a keylogger, got the teacher's creds, and put Minecraft on a USB. Then they simply logged into the teacher's account, plugged in the USB, and played at whatever station they liked. School presumably never found out, and I actually have no idea if any of it was true. The only proof they could show was logging into an admin account and playing Minecraft, but they were legendary to the rest of us. Story 63. This was a million years ago, but there was a guy, I'll call him Jerk, because he was one, that used to strut around and challenge everyone to fight, and was known to grab girls at random. For some reason, he was in with the popular kids. He was a big guy, had a rich daddy too, who used to cover up for all of his mistakes and jerkery. As I said, Jerk thought he could pretty much grab and do with any girl in the school as he pleased. I was a lowly freshman then, and we had a guy in our class we'll call Ron. Not his real name, obviously. He was nice to me because I was old friends with his girlfriend, since kindergarten actually, but struck fear into pretty much anyone else that crossed him. He was a pit bull personified. Everyone in my class knew that you didn't mess with Ron, even a little. He wasn't that tall, but he was made of pure wound muscle. So one day, Rich Jerk decides to feel up Ron's girlfriend in the hall during class. Without hesitation, Ron turns around and just punches the Jerk in the face full force. Knocked him down where he should have stayed, but he wasn't too smart. So Jerk gets up and yells that it was a sucker punch, so Ron lets him get up, even lets Jerk take a swing, and then proceeds to beat him into unconsciousness with about 3 punches. Jerk wasn't able to land a single punch. All of this before the teachers could break through the crowd and break it up. Every single person they told them that Jerk started it. It ended with a very bloodied, pretty sure he had a broken nose, Nick being hauled out of school. He didn't seem to have the same strut after that, and pretty much kept to himself. Ron's do not F with Ron reputation was solidified forever. Story 64. This story was legend, wait for it, dairy. I'm not sure if they're still telling it after all these years, but it was a freshman year and they continued to tell it the whole time I was there. Context. Freshman English. We have a middle-aged lady who isn't new to teaching but is new to our school. She's old-fashioned and wound a bit tight. For some reason, most of our class just tore into her all the time. She never gained the respect of our class, so people were always just jerks to her. Our classroom was on the 2nd story and there were some bushes below the window. Now the story. It was a seemingly normal day at school. To those unaware of what was happening, it was. However, during one of those passing periods, some were strangely not headed to the class that they were supposed to be in. A few people are headed to English at the wrong time. The teacher is at her desk, waiting for the class to start as students are coming in and out of the classroom. One kid walks in, I'll just call him Kid, with a capital K, and he puts his backpack down at his seat, but he doesn't sit down. After a bit, there's a sort of a group forming around by one of the windows, but the teacher thinks nothing of it. Now, it should be said that Kid is known for being a bit reckless. He's done crazy stuff before, and he would go on to do crazy stuff after. I'm not sure how he got the idea, but Kid had brought a rope to school and tied it to a radiator near the open window. The students gathered around, pretty much blocking any view of the window at this point, and the atmosphere of the room is full of a normal buzz of transition between classes. Then this kid decides to repel out the dang window. He was planning on repelling down and coming back inside the door, back to the classroom in time for class to start. Instead, when he puts his weight on the rope, it immediately snaps. He falls and lands in the bushes below. The students around the window close it and take their seats as class is about to start. The bell rings and Kid's backpack is still there at his seat, but he's nowhere to be found. Finally, after probably 10 minutes, Kid walks in, shaken, with leaves in his hair, his backpack already at his seat. The exasperated teacher asks, "Kid, where have you been?" And Kid replies, the bathroom? Too long didn't read, so that's the story of a freshman who tried to repel out of the second-story window while the teacher was in the room, but the rope broke and he fell. But he still made it to class without the teacher finding out. Story 65. Mike O. Why O? Because my high school has a lot of double names. We got used to some people being referred to their last initial because otherwise we didn't know which Mike we were talking about. Anyways, Mike O was an annoying little twat, and when I say little, I mean abnormally so. He was in 8th grade, but he wasn't over 100 pounds and had to be less than 5.5 feet tall. He was hyperactive as heck and he never shut up. No one really hated him, but even the people of the Outcast crew could hardly tolerate spending time with him. Cut to 2 years later, and a new out-of-towner arrives and enrolls in the school, and this guy was the yin to Mike O's yang. Instead of being remarkably tiny and extremely annoying, he was effing massive and all sorts of cool. The guy had to be nearing 7 feet, and he wasn't fat or overweight by any stretch of the imagination. He was just an absolute tower of a teenager, and he was more muscular than Mike O as well. Just a couple weeks later, this new guy had found a home and gained respect amongst the popular crowd, and he was also fast friends with Mike O. This is where everything shifted for little Mikey. The entire school found the ridiculous contrast between the two very comical. And when I say ridiculous, I'm talking two guys from the same age bracket, one of which stands just above waist high next to the other. It was quite hilarious to see them chatting with such an extreme head tilt in an effort to make eye contact, with base camp from the upper slopes of Mount Holy F, you're tall. I wasn't close friends with either of them, but suffice to say, the halls quickly became overrun with giant groups chanting, "Mikey-O! Mikey-O!" for no apparent reason. After that, Mikey-O joined the basketball team and gained a little respect of his own, and I believe he went on to graduate with the popular crowd. Story 66. This will be special because it wasn't a student who was a legend, it was a teacher. He taught history. He had a really creepy vibe around him. One of the minor stories was that he had a child with his student. How was he still employed? 1, he taught in a school in an Eastern Bloc country where it's really hard to fire a teacher. 2, she was in between finishing school and her final exams. She just went on a school trip at that time with him and technically wasn't a student anymore. 3, she was 19, so she consented and was happy to raise the kid on her own. If it was your birthday, you'd hide from him as the moment he'd find out, he'd hug you in a very uncomfortable way and kiss you on the cheek. Sometimes he'd grope you. All you needed as a girl were some low-cut tops. Boys needed tight trousers, and he would touch their butts when they were cleaning the boards. We'd had blackboards and chalk. He would frequently go to a club known for drag queen scenes, although we've never seen him in drag. That would be enough, but no. It was my best friend's lesson. It was close to summer holidays, and they weren't doing much. He said he didn't plan a lesson, so they will watch a movie about the Cold War. He grabbed the school diary, a paper book that the teacher used to track attendance and grades, and started lazily checking who was in, chatting while the movie played in the background. Only it wasn't Cold War. It was probably made at that time, considering the amount of hair, both pubic and facial, but Soviets were nowhere to be seen. There were other things to be seen, all nice and zoomed on. They, the class, tried to let him know, but he kept hushing them and continued with his chit-chats. She said it took a good 15 minutes for him to realize it wasn't a Cold War movie. He lazily walked to the TV, that type you had to roll into the classroom, and put it on fast forward, so we could see everything, the happy endings included. And then after that cinematic experience, there it was, a Cold War documentary about nukes and Americans. He still teaches in this high school as far as I know. Superstar. I sometimes remember him and get the creeps. To add to the fun, his second name roughly translates into lad. Too long didn't read, a creepy teacher put on some adult content instead of Cold War docs in class and didn't get fired or punished in any way, but still teaches. Story 67. In 10th grade, one of my new classmates willingly put up her hand in class and told us how she had gotten scammed out of jewelry and electronics by driving them to some random guy and dropping them off. Yeah, it wasn't even an online scam. She literally dropped off a bag of her stuff to some dude. Funnily enough, her mom demanded to see our homeroom teacher because her daughter was being bullied because of an embarrassing and vulnerable experience. Our teacher looked her dead in the eye and said, "Ma'am, how do you think we found out?" She told the whole class out of her own volition, and her mom was speechless. The memory is sweet to this day. Also, one of my underclassmen managed to trick our art teacher that a guy who left the year before was still in school. Just had cancer treatment on the days he had art classes. The rest of the class turned in fake homework and projects and got one of the middle schoolers to pretend to be his younger sister, and sure enough, the art teacher graded him and everything. Eventually, it became a running joke within high school, where sometimes we'd get a bad grade and say, "I cannot believe I don't have as good of a grade as missing student's name," in the most overly serious way possible. When the guy who left found out, he loved it.